What's up, everybody? Big Herc getting down with Fresh Out. You know how we do it over here, man. I keep you guys with the good stories, original content, and I have a special guest with me here today, the communicator, military. You know, he's got some stuff he wants to share and very unique story. So we're going to get into it and let him share it with you guys. Make sure you guys leave a comment, ask some questions in the commentary. But Z, tell the people a little bit about your background, man, where you from, how you grew up, all that good stuff.
What's up, dude? Thank you for having me. I really go back. I have to go all the way back to when I was like definitely a kid, 5, 6 years old. My earliest memories were hanging out with my biological dad working on his 1977 Monte Carlo. He had that old 454 big block, like engine swapped into it, and had a lot of work done to it. And then he got a new girlfriend, who ended up being the new wife, and me and my little brother were just too much trouble for her and him. So they gave us to my biological grandma on my mom's side. And the entire time this is all going on, my mom is in prison. And then I lived with my grandma for a hot spell until I was like 13. And that's really that time frame between 6 and 13. That's actually where I kind of started to believe in like joining the military at a young age. Like I knew what I wanted to do. And it was honestly that movie Navy SEALs with Charlie Sheen. If you've ever seen it, have you ever seen that? It's really good. Yeah. There's a Charlie Sheen's character, Lieutenant Dale Hawkins. There's one scene where he's like right in the back of a red Jeep. And I always got to tell this story because it's so sick. But in the back of the Jeep, they're riding across the Coronado Bay Bridge there in San Diego. And he just whimsically just jumps out of the back of the Jeep while it's moving across the bridge into the water down below. And I was like, I want to be that guy. That's who I want to be when I get older. And then my older brother ended up buying us BB guns, started to teach us some boxing between me and my cousins at this time, because all of the women on my mom's side, so all of my mom's sisters, all of them really weren't good at taking care of their kids, so they just pawned them off on our grandma. All across the United States, somehow 7 of us ended up being raised in a single wide trailer out in the middle of the backwoods up in Northern California. And I really started to get really good with a BB gun, and then learned how to shoot with a 22. And we'd have like BB gun wars amongst us kids on 24 acres of land. And it was a really good time.
Can you speak on what your mom was in prison for?
What I understand, it's like mixed reporting. I don't really trust a lot into what my biological family says in terms of what she was doing and whatnot. But there are still online reports, and a lot of it was a lot of fraud. There's even a case of auto burglary and Grand Theft Auto. And then later on into the story, some other things come out when she gets out of prison. I end up living with her. And at this point, I'm like 12, 13 years old. She's bouncing from new boyfriend to new boyfriend. And they're just bad dudes. Like none of them are really good dudes. One of them, I remember to this day, he's straight up that guy that in my head, I can still see him sitting on the couch watching a Seattle Seahawks game, surrounded by empty beer cans of just a 40 rack. And he was straight up a bully. He's the type of dude that at one point he got drunk and he would just hold me against the wall and be like, I'm never going to amount to anything in my life. And at that point, I remember looking at him like, I never want to be like that guy ever again. So I started getting really good role models on how not to be as I got older, which was actually a great thing for me because I haven't turned out to be like that. So, but on the flip side, it harms my like social interaction, which I've noticed. The way I come down on people or towards people, I come off very like harsh or direct, straight to the point. So, which makes sense. You go through a childhood like that, you tend to be you don't beat around the bush and play the social games very much. You don't really care to, but that's something subconsciously I'm working on a little bit. But she gets out of prison. We go through dealing with all these boyfriends and husbands. She's very bad about getting into random marriages. I have 5 other siblings, all of us different dads, minus my biological little brother. So yeah, she bounced around a lot. The last one, that really broke the camel's back, lived with her from 13 to 16. And we ended up moving out to Oklahoma, at which point she started some sort of, it was like a marijuana, grow it in the Green Triangle, sell it out east for 3 or however many X the profit, transporting it across state lines. And then she got hemmed up for that. Some things went down. Me and my biological brother ended up not in a good place. He ended up as extremely racist due to those years, because when we moved to Tulsa, Oklahoma, we didn't have a lot of money to live in a normal neighborhood. Like a little bit, it was awkward. Like we were the only white kids for like 12 different blocks. And at one point we ended up getting jumped, and my brother went the exact opposite direction that I did. Cause I can shrug a lot of things off, but he went completely like full blown, to this day, very, very racist. Has a swastika on his right bicep. Whereas like I was able to like shrug it off and end up joining the military like I always wanted to. But those were a dark 3 years. But getting out of those 3 years, he ended up staying with my mom, which has led to a life of crime. He's been in and out of jail for going on 12 years now. Actually, he was in prison this last stint somewhere up in, I want to say, Tennessee. Yeah, it was Tennessee. I look him up every now and then to see how he's doing or what's been going on. And I looked him up in 2020. And we briefly talked on Instagram, and then didn't hear from him until literally last year when he got out of prison. So he was in there for like 3, almost 4 years. But, and that was for some wild stuff, like a police standoff, body armor, drugs were involved. Most of his arrests were all drug related, but her last arrest was drug related because she had this big growing operation she was doing that I don't know too much on, but it was wild. But I remember being in a bad way when I was about 16 years old. And so I reached out to some childhood friends that I knew while I was staying with my grandma to see if I could stay with them or go back out to California and live with them just until I could join the Marine Corps when I turned 18. And they adopted me. They ended up adopting me pretty much. And they gave me a fresh start, because I still firmly believe, like looking at the direction my brother ended up, had I stayed there, I would have ended up in that same direction. And then
you know what's crazy is that, when you have different siblings, everybody has a different personality. I mean, I have a different dad than my brother and sister, and then my other brother and sister. So, we're all different. The drive, the mentality, the way we address issues. So it's kind of crazy, even though we all have the same mom, where I feel personality wise, we're all totally different, man.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that is true. Him and I are polar opposites. Like, even when we talk now, we still acknowledge like we're brothers. Like there's no bad blood or anything. And it took me a while to reason with it, because I kind of felt like I should have found a way to bring him with me, but at the same time I was still a kid.
Yeah.
Like there's nothing I could really do in that situation. Nor, like, he acknowledges like he probably wouldn't have listened to me anyways, because I was still just a kid. But as kids, going into the Marine Corps, so I used to read a lot of books. Again, when I moved out to, originally I wanted to be a Navy SEAL like Lieutenant Dale Hawkins, but then when I moved out to Oklahoma, there was a point where I kind of felt alone. It was me, my brother, hard at making friends, it was terrible time making friends. So I resorted to reading books and playing video games, and then just getting through school. And some of those books I would read would be was Sniper 1 by Dan Mills. It's a really good book, but it's about a sergeant named Daniel Mills. It's like a biography of his time in Ramadi, and he was a Royal Marine. And he kind of breaks down Marines, like American Marines in Ramadi, and how awesome they were, especially the Scout Sniper platoons. And from that moment, I was like, maybe I should be a Marine Scout Sniper. Like maybe that's what I should go do, because I was really good with a BB gun, a 22, things like that. So it kind of started to sway, that book in particular started to sway my opinion. Reading a book called Hogs in the Shadows by Milo S. Afong. And he was an Army sniper, but a lot of the, no, he was a Marine sniper, but a lot of the stories in it is a mix of Army snipers and Marine snipers. And in the book, the attention to detail kind of seemed to be a little bit better for Marine snipers in terms of attention to detail and just the better training criteria and things like that. So I ended up wanting to be a Marine sniper. So I went to the Marine Corps, ended up not becoming a sniper, which is kind of going back, like, weird how things turn out. But when I joined the Marine Corps, the recruiter honestly kind of almost screwed me a little bit because he left me as an open contract, and I didn't realize that until I went to basic training. An open contract is basically, when you get there, it's needs of the Marine Corps. They can do with you. I thought, me being young, dumb kid, like, I was going into the recruiter's office. I had the highest PT score of the entire recruiter's office and whatnot, and I was a little hot-headed. So me saying that I wanted an 03 contract, I wanted to be a sniper later on, like go to a stay platoon, I guess that wasn't conveyed enough at some point in the enlistment process, because he left me as an open contract. So I went to boot camp. We were in the last couple weeks when you get your MOS, like what you're going to do. And I started to freak out because I had a really good rifle score. And then I also had a great PT score, maxed the PT test, and was in line for being the Iron Man. And I actually ended up losing the Ironman by 2 pull-ups. Like, there was just one kid that we were like the same neck and neck pace for the run. Same thing with crunches. He just beat me by 2 pull-ups because he did, I think it was like 35 or 34, and then I did 33 pull-ups. Yeah, we get into the final weeks to where they let you know your MOS, and my MOS was open contract. And I freak out a little bit. My kill hat, he was a state platoon guy back in 06. If I remember correctly, it was D.I. Sanchez. But that dude kind of vouched for me and went to the senior drill instructor. And then they made sure I at least got an 03 open contract. So that, and what that does is when you leave basic training or boot camp, you go to infantry training or Marine combat training, MCT. Marine combat training goes, everyone that's not an infantry billet MOS, they go and do like a shorter familiarization of like how to work a machine gun, how to work a rifle, how to do the regular infantry tasks, but not in depth. So being that I got an 03 open contract, I was able to go to infantry school. I ended up doing the 0311 package and then volunteered to try out for Recon, which there was a nightmare in itself, kind of a nightmare. It was like the best learning curve a troubled young kid could learn. So I went to MART, is what it's called, is MART, Marines Awaiting Reconnaissance Training, thinking that I was going to be fine. I very much was not fine. That was like, even to this day, after becoming a Green Beret, like that was still the hardest training I've ever done. And even dudes that were prior Recon Marines, like became Green Berets, we all still agree, like the hardest training we've ever done is going through MART or surviving at least a month to 2 months in MART. And what that training looked like, it was your almost 18-hour days. You're talking, you wake up at 5, you'll wake up at 5 in the morning. The chow hall was a little over a mile down the road. You're going to you run or bear crawl or some sort of ridiculous calisthenic all the way to the chow hall, eat your food. Yeah, whatever it was. Because their sole job, and he's retired, but Gunny Zoran, this guy's job, and greatest like I've never gained so much mental fortitude than when that guy ran MART. But and I still to this day, like every lesson I got out of that guy, I still appreciate it, even though it was super painful. But yeah, it would be his sole job was to weed out the weak. Like we would bear crawl to the chow hall, bear crawl back, and then go on a 12-mile run in northern Camp Pendleton, which is up and over some mountains, just to eat lunch, to get on the bus and go to the pool, and then tread water for 4 to 5 hours. And we would tread water until a certain amount of people quit. Or if on the Gunny run, when we're running across these mountains, he would just stop, put his hands out, and just flash him down. And he'd be like, everyone behind me, get to the vehicles. You're getting dropped. Like if you didn't stay in front of Gunny, like you were getting cut.
So what do you mean as far as like in front of him while he was running?
Yeah. So you had to stay in front because Gunny's Ran was a tank. He was an absolute beast. So he could keep like a 6 to 8 mile pace, 6 to 8 mile an hour pace up and over these mountains. If you didn't stay in front of him, chances are he was.
This guy?
I want to say back then he was early 30s to mid 30s. Now he's easily in his 40s now.
And what were you wearing when you guys were treading water? Was that in uniform?
But yeah, it was full uniform, minus boots. Like very rarely they'd have us put on boots. But yeah, it would definitely be in uniform. And it made sense because you would do the full uniform. And then by the time you actually picked up to BRC, because MART was the preparation so that you could survive BRC. Once you take that uniform off in the pool became a playground. It was like you go from being I don't even know how to describe it, but it was like you go from being a horse sloshing around in water to automatically turn into a goldfish and you're able to just survive. It is the slickest feeling. But yeah, and then you would do things like swimming 50 meters underwater in a full uniform, so you have all that extra drag, and then you take that uniform off after a certain amount of time, and then all of a sudden you can do 75, possibly 100 meters underwater. And it was some of the best physical training I've ever gotten. But it for me, it became a little too much. I don't really have great genetics in terms of what my body can withstand. My brain, I'm very capable of turning off pain. But at one point I got recycled because I got patella tendonitis in both knees. Like I jumped up onto these logs and my legs just locked out. Like they just stopped working and I fell on my face on the opposite side of these logs because we were doing log PT. And they had to roll me to the next class just because my tendons my muscles and everything were just seizing. It just wasn't a good time.
Damn.
But yeah, I got rolled, ended up also failing the communications test, which is even more funny because I'm very technologically savvy. Even in high school, I built my own gaming computer just to play video games, things like that. Like I said, like I resorted to reading and video games when I was having a hard time making friends and I just kept getting beat up in high school and whatnot. And so ended up failing the communications test, recycled a class in BRC because the communications test, came back, studied a little bit more, crushed the communications test, went to my first unit, which was out in 3rd Recon. And the entire time I was out in 3rd Recon, I ended up being billeted as an RTO for the most part, which is the technologically savvy guy. And I was the guy that failed the communications test, but I just got more training on it. So I became more aware of it.
What does RTO mean?
Radio technical operator.
Okay.
But that's not the MOS. Like I was still a Recon Marine, but I was billeted as that within a Recon team.
Okay.
And then at 3rd Recon, I really fell in love with special operations, or the idea of special operations. And that's honestly where it kind of started to get like jaded. Because the Marine Corps really stopped deploying. I mean, it would deploy on the Thirst Mew, and depending on who you talk to, they'll say that's a deployment or it counts as a deployment. I was looking around and I was like, I didn't get in a gunfight or do anything too cool. So I was like, I don't see how that's a deployment. We just went on ship, bounced some islands, ate in some things that weren't really that big of a deal. But one of the things that really started to irritate me was we were doing an advanced recon and surveillance course, and one of the culmination events, we bring in the Force Recon guys, and we would have to go out into the jungle, reconnoiter an objective, and then coordinate with the Force Recon guys to come and hit the objective. This major walks in, and he starts his portion of the brief to start briefing the uplift, which was an infantry platoon. And this major, in his conversation, he goes, all the sergeants for the platoon are going to have to be wary of the hitters in the back of the room. We're talking about the Force Recon guys, and pay mind that they're not like, he said this, he's like, pay mind they're not like Navy SEALs, so their shots aren't going to be as accurate. So make sure you guys have cover. And me being the young hothead that I am, I'm like, I look around and I'm like, are we seriously taking this? And this major was just fat as shit. Like, he should not have been a major saying these things. And that was one of the first times I really started to become jaded, because I was like, this guy's also a Marine. He's a Marine major talking his shit on recon and force recon dudes, like, tactfully, and all we can do is sit there and take it. And I'm not very good at taking things like that. And then the next iteration, I was walking through the PX, and after you go to dive school and you get your goal, do so many jumps under a certain criteria, you get gold wings. So you get your dive bubble and gold wings. It's known as the dual cool. And I used to have slick back hair. Like, I got long hair now, but in the Marine Corps, I still had long hair according to standards, and I would slick it back. So I look kind of belligerent, and I'll give them that. But this first sergeant walks up to me, and he flicks my dual cool, gets me at parade rest, and he asks me, like, so what, you think you're the better than the rest of us? And me, again, being the hothead that I am, I looked at him and was like, as a matter of fact, I do. Like, at this point, I was totally over it. I'm jaded at this point. And yeah, I ended up doing burpees. My gunny had me do burpees in full kit, like 40 pounds of kit, until the sun went down. For disrespect, and granted, you can't say that to higher ups, but one of the things that really didn't sit right with me is, in the Marine Corps, it's very much every Marine's a rifleman. Like, every Marine thinks they're special operations or they're really good. Even if they spent 17 years as motor T and another 7 years on the drill field, they think they're like the hottest shit since sliced bread. I really started to get very jaded, and I understand being humble. I understand the idea of it, but it's crazy to me is majority of the people that act that way never even once signed up to go into the infantry, like do actual infantry tactics, which I think is against being a Marine as a whole. Like, if you want to preach about being a Marine, you should at least serve some time in the infantry. And that really, that started to rub me the wrong way. So after all of that and a couple more incidences on the MEU itself, dealing with some Navy personnel, I started to look elsewhere. And part of that elsewhere ended up being naval special warfare. And I was like, I might as well give being a SEAL a try. So I left the Marine Corps and kind of got rubbed.
To do that, to like cross over from one branch to another.
It used to not be hard, but I think because so many people started leaving the Marine Corps, especially in the special operations MOSs, they started to crack down on it. So it ended up being a very much you had to get completely out. They used to have lateral transfers. Like, you could go to Army Special Forces selection, like move over. From what I understand, you used to be able to do that up until like 2012 or 2013. And same thing with buds. Like, you used to be able to just laterally move, like go to buds. If you fail, you go right back to the Marine Corps. Well, they did away with that. And so I had to legitimately get out. So I started running a lot more, getting back into really good shape. Like, I was running a 3 mile in about 16 minutes.
Damn.
I could do, at one point I could do the entire Marine Corps PFT in under 18 minutes, which is what it's called as the Stanton Challenge. And you should look into the background of the Stanton Challenge. It was created, and no one's filled in the plaque at 2nd Recon because it was made by a Corporal Stanton, who was a really great, phenomenal recon Marine with a phenomenal reputation. And everyone strives to maintain that reputation, but no one has filled in that plaque, which is a good thing. But yeah, no, I could accomplish the Stanton Challenge, and then I got out of the Marine Corps, went to try out. I went to like a SEAL Fit weekend, and there was one cadre that really just didn't like Marines, and he wanted me to wait 2 extra years.
Damn.
Roughly. Yeah, he wanted me to wait 2 extra years because I was using the breaststroke instead of the side stroke, even though out of like 36 dudes that showed up that day, I was like the second fastest swimmer of the entire showing, where the first dude was a high school, like borderline collegiate swimmer. Like, he was going on to college until he could leave to buds to swim. So I was like, okay, that's dope. But this guy wanted me to wait 2 years. And I was like, I'm not doing that. So the very next day I walked into the Army recruiter, and they gave me an 18 X-ray contract right away after a PT test and going to MEPS. I had to redo my ASVAB just a little bit, which is fine because I had a 105 GT score, and then I redid it and ended up with like a 127 GT score. And then, I went to Fort Benning literally a month later, checked in for one-stop unit training. So the Army, it takes its basic training in infantry training and compiles it into one 14-week program, which like I was already kind of jaded towards like big picture Marine Corps. When I ended up going through infantry training on the Army side, I really started to get jaded. Granted, I had some amazing drill sergeants, but some of the things I witnessed there in Fort Benning were just atrocious. And when I say atrocious, like one dude in the holding platoon. Now, granted, to back up a little bit, usually the way it used to work is if you were an infantry billeted MOS in the Marine Corps, you didn't have to really do Army basic training and infantry training. But because Recon in the Army is classified as a scout, it's not considered an infantry billet. So they made me go through a large portion of the basic training, which was absolutely wild. And I had like worst time ever. Looking back on it, it was, and when I say the worst time, it was more so just it wasn't physically hard. It was nowhere near physically hard. It was very disappointing because what I had experienced in the Marine Corps infantry training side of it, like if you fell asleep in a fighting position, one of the combat instructors would just fly across and drop kick you, like no shit. In Marine Corps infantry training, that's what I witnessed. Was like my boy in the foxhole next to me was falling asleep, and you can always tell when someone's falling asleep under nods because their nods just do this like vertical up and down movement, and we call it bobbing for cock because you're literally just doing this. You're literally just doing this, man. And
so you better not fall asleep.
Yeah. And this dude, I just hear the feet like pouncing on the ground, and I just watch a combat instructor just fly across, double feet drop kick this dude into his fighting position.
Shit.
And just all you hear is a loud wake the fuck up. Like the entire mountain hears it. So that was the type of level, like that's what I was used to for the Marine Corps infantry side of like teaching people. Because if you fall asleep and you're the dude on watch, chances are people die.
Yeah,
and that's the way they trained. The Army very much was not like that in the infantry side of it. Like I remember I just started getting pissed off, and one of the drill sergeants, he went to the first sergeant and was like, hey, I'm going to have this guy play Op 4 because he kind of knew my background in terms of being a recon Marine. And so they let me play Op 4, and one night I ended up stealing like two machine guns. It was like two machine guns, two saws, one 240 Bravo, and a rucksack and a bunch of random pieces of ammo and gear. And I brought it to my like little ORP. Like I was sneaking into their patrol bases and doing this because they were all falling asleep on our watch. One dude, I lost my mind on because I was grabbing his 240 and it was up under him. Like he fell asleep on top of it, which is kind of a good thing to do. If you're going to fall asleep, you might as well retain your weapon system. But I was able to like pull his arms apart and just grab it from him while he stayed in his sleeping system.
Wow.
And then I just kind of said, I said, screw it. And I grabbed my M4 and I just shot a blank in the air, and dude didn't wake up. Dude didn't get up whatsoever. Yeah.
What the hell?
And I kind of started losing my mind. Like, is it like, why am I here? Like this is just crazy.
So you're saying literally the caliber of individual, it was so like just disappointing. You're like, man, what the hell am I doing?
Yeah. And I had a heart-to-heart with one of the drill sergeants who was really cool. Dude was like, dude, no, I get it. I get your frustration. But the problem is if we do anything, like if we IT these guys, they end up writing a congressman and we lose our jobs. So what all we're here to do is tell them, hey, that wasn't cool. Don't do that. And then their unit will fix them. And I was like, huh. So all we're doing is just kicking the can down the road to the next guy. And so, yeah, it really started to open my eyes like, okay, maybe this was a little bit rough. Maybe this was a rough decision. Maybe I should have waited the 2 years to go to Buds.